orange orbs launched smaller red orbs. That was the sentence in the Department of War slide, and it did not behave like a normal sentence. It behaved like somebody had slipped a magic trick into government paperwork and then walked away before explaining where the rabbit went. The first PURSUE release gave us the helicopter case, pilots, a senior intelligence official, radar direction, ground teams, orange lights near the rotor disc, and a file that refused to become simple. This one was different. There was no helicopter crew to follow through the dark, no low fuel clock, no cockpit pressure. This was stranger in a cleaner way. A Western U.S. event slide deck described behavior, not just lights, behavior. The claim was that large orange orbs appeared at dusk and emitted smaller red orbs on 2 separate days. If that sentence had shown up on a message board, I would have put one cautious finger on the pause button. If it had shown up in a blurry clip with dramatic music and 16 arrows, I would have checked whether my soul had a return policy. But it showed up inside the official PURSUE release, which does not make it true. It makes it a problem worth reading carefully. So the story is not, did the government admit alien drones were having babies over the desert? No. Please do not make me be the adult this early. The story is, why did an official source record describe repeatable object behavior, and what kind of explanation would actually have to survive that description? Start with the setting. Western U.S., dusk. A range environment where aircraft, lights, tests, flares, terrain, distance, and human expectation can all team up and embarrass the observer. That matters. A range is not an empty sky. It is a place where ordinary explanations already have home field advantage. Flares can look strange. Training lights can look strange. Aircraft can stack in the distance. A drone can look bigger or smaller than it is. A reflection can become a witness statement if the geometry is cruel enough. Dusk is especially rude because the sky still has light, the ground is losing it, and your brain starts filling in the missing paperwork. That is the boring side of the case. And the boring side deserves the first chair. Then the slide adds the part that makes the boring side sweat. Orange orbs reportedly emitting smaller red orbs, and doing it on 2 separate days. One weird light is easy to bully into an explanation. 2 nights with the same reported behavior is harder. Not impossible. Harder. Repetition is where a story stops being a spark and starts asking for a mechanism. A flare can separate from another flare. A drone can release a smaller drone. A light can look like it split because of perspective, exposure, cloud, terrain, or the way the observer moved. A military range can contain things that ordinary viewers would not know how to identify. But every answer now has to explain the verb, emitted. That is the word that changes the room. The object was not only reported as present, it was reported as doing something. A larger orange light, then smaller red lights coming from it. If the witness was wrong, what made the mistake look like separation? If the witness was right, what ordinary process produces that behavior? If the slide summarized it poorly, what original observation was being compressed into that phrase? That is the trapdoor. The deck did not stop with the orange and red orbs. It widened the weirdness. A fiery orb entered the story. Then car-like lights in a restricted area. Then a dark kite-like shape. Then a transparent kite-like shape that was supposedly visible only for a moment under night vision. That is where a weak telling would become a parade. Here is the orange orb. Here is the red orb. Here is the dark kite. Here is the transparent kite. Here is the fiery orb. Please collect your souvenir magnet at the exit. That would be a visual mess and an audio nap. The stronger story is that the deck kept changing the kind of uncertainty. The orange orbs asked a behavior question. The fiery orb asked a distance and brightness question. The dark kite asked a shape question. The transparent kite asked a sensor and perception question. Those are not the same mystery wearing different hats. They are different ways a record can get stuck. So imagine the wild version for a minute, because Act 3 is where the campfire gets its turn. The sun was going down over a western range. The terrain was darkening. Somewhere out there, a large orange light held in the sky long enough to become more than a glance. Then a smaller red point appeared from it. Not beside it, not below it in a way the mind could casually throw away. From it. Then again. The next day, the same sort of behavior was described again. That is the version your imagination wants. It wants the sky to have machinery in it. It wants the big orange light to be a carrier and the smaller red lights to be scouts. It wants the range to become a stage and the file to become a confession. And honestly, as a story image, that version is ridiculous in the best and worst way. Paperwork should not make you picture a glowing orange object releasing red sparks over restricted terrain like the night had started subcontracting. But then we come back to Earth. The wild version has to survive the range. Could these have been flares? Maybe. Flares can separate, drift, brighten, dim, and create colored points. They can be deployed from aircraft or ground systems. They can make people who do not know the exercise plan think the sky has become theatrical. Could they have been drones? Also maybe. A larger visible drone or aircraft could release smaller objects, or smaller lights could appear near it by timing and perspective. That would explain behavior without leaving Earth. Could they have been aircraft, terrain lights, vehicle lights, lens effects, or witness distance errors? Yes, especially in low light over complex terrain. But the ordinary explanation has to do real work. It has to explain why the report described the action as emission. It has to explain why the behavior was recorded across separate days. It has to explain why the same deck also preserved shape oddities and restricted zone language instead of closing everything neatly. That does not make the exotic answer win. It means the lazy answer does not get a trophy either. The dark kite is a good example. If car-like lights moved in or near a restricted area and a witness briefly saw a dark triangular or kite-like shape through night vision, the first sensible explanation is not alien craft. The first sensible explanation is vehicle, terrain, optics, partial silhouette, expectation, or a brief visual artifact. All of that is on the table. But it still has to fit the record. The same with the transparent kite. That phrase sounds like it escaped from a bad sci-fi paperback, which is why we have to be even more careful. Transparent can mean many things. It can mean barely visible. It can mean a contrast edge. It can mean night vision weirdness. It can mean the witness was trying to describe a shape that did not behave like a normal solid object in the viewing conditions. It does not automatically mean invisible spaceship. It does mean the deck was not only about dots, that is the useful pressure. The slide deck did not hand us one perfect case. It handed us a behavior and perception cluster, lights separating, shapes appearing, distance estimates changing, and witnesses trying to put language on things the record did not settle. This is why the episode has to be visually careful. The official slide pages matter, but they cannot carry the whole story. If the viewer spends 5 minutes staring at documents, the file becomes homework again. The better visual path is source anchor, then range dusk, then guarded reconstruction of the behavior, then Mason pulling the claim back through ordinary explanations. Big orange orb, smaller red point, second night. Then the sky refuses to stay in one category. That is a story. The ending is not that Orbs launched Orbs because the government said so. It did not say that as a conclusion. It preserved a claim. There is a difference between a record describing something and a record proving what that something was. The ending is also not that flares or drones automatically solved it because those words exist. Explanation is not a magic eraser. It has to touch every part of the stain. What this file did was move the Pursue season from a chase story into a behavior story. The helicopter case asked what followed the aircraft. This deck asked what the lights were doing when no one could make them act normal. And that is why it belongs near the front of the series. It is simple enough to remember and strange enough to argue with. Large orange orbs, smaller red orbs, 2 days, kite shapes, fiery light, official uncertainty. Not aliens by default, not nothing by laziness. Just a government slide deck with one sentence that kept opening under my feet. Until next time, remember that history is mostly ordinary people doing ordinary things right before the consequences arrive. The past was not wiser, just less recently embarrassed. Thanks for watching.